No is a complete sentence. You don't owe anyone an explanation.
Introduction by Dr. Julian Vance. Saying no shouldn't feel like betrayal, but for most of us it does. We were taught that kindness means sacrifice, that love means compliance, and that success requires endless yes. Slowly, we became strangers to ourselves, overcommit, overstimulated, and overwhelmed. This book is born from that quiet suffering. It is a guide for those who are tired of living on everyone else's terms. Here, we strip away the guilt, the fear, and the lies that keep you from protecting your time, your energy, and your mental peace. The art of saying no is not just about rejection. It's about creation. You are building space for clarity, for rest, for your real priorities. You are learning to say yes to what truly matters, your vision, your values, your life. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to be liked by everyone. You only need the courage to honor your truth. This is where that journey begins. Welcome to the art of saying no. Chapter 1. The hidden cost of saying yes. Introduction. The yes trap. Welcome to a journey that might just transform how you navigate your daily life. I'm going to share with you something that took me years to understand. Every time you say yes to something you don't truly want to do, you're saying no to something you do want to do. This isn't just about time management. It's about the very essence of who you are and who you're becoming. Think about yesterday. How many times did you say yes when you really wanted to say no? Maybe it was staying late at work when you had plans with your family. Perhaps it was agreeing to help a friend move when you desperately needed a day to yourself. Or maybe it was as simple as saying yes to a social gathering when all you wanted was to curl up with a good book. Each of these moments represents what I call the hidden cost of saying yes, a price we pay not just in time, but in energy, authenticity, and ultimately in our sense of self. The invisible drain, understanding the true cost. When we constantly say yes to others, we think we're being helpful, kind, or professional. But what we're actually doing is participating in a subtle form of self-betrayal. Let me paint you a picture of what this looks like in real life. Sarah is a marketing manager who prides herself on being the go-to person at her office. When colleagues need help with projects, she's there. When her boss asks for volunteers for weekend events, her hand shoots up. When friends need someone to listen to their problems, she's available at all hours. On the surface, Sarah seems successful and well-liked. But beneath this exterior, something troubling is happening. Sarah hasn't read a book in 2 years, despite having a stack of novels on her bedside table. She's canceled her gym membership 3 times because she never has time to use it. Her dream of learning photography sits dormant because every weekend is filled with obligations she's agreed to. Most telling of all, when someone asks her what she really wants, she genuinely doesn't know anymore. This is the hidden cost of saying yes. It's not just about being busy. It's about losing touch with your own desires, dreams, and sense of direction. When we constantly prioritize others' needs over our own, we don't just lose time, we lose ourselves. The confidence paradox. Here's something counterintuitive. The more we say yes to please others, the less confident we become. You might think that being helpful and accommodating would boost your self-esteem. After all, people like you. They come to you for help, they depend on you. But this creates what I call the confidence paradox. True confidence comes from knowing your own mind, trusting your instincts, and acting in alignment with your values. When we constantly defer to others' requests and needs, we're essentially telling ourselves that our own judgment isn't trustworthy. We're saying that what others want is more important than what we want. Consider James, a software developer who never turns down additional assignments. His manager loves him because he's reliable. His teammates appreciate that he'll always help debug their code. But James has started to doubt his own technical abilities. Why? Because he's so focused on meeting everyone else's expectations that he's never given himself the space to develop his own technical vision or pursue the projects that genuinely excite him. Every time James says yes to something he doesn't want to do, he's reinforcing a message to himself. Your preferences don't matter. Your time isn't valuable. Your dreams can wait. This is how people-pleasing erodes confidence from the inside out. The life purpose hijack. Perhaps the most devastating cost of constant yesing is what it does to our sense of life purpose. We all have an inner compass, a sense of what matters to us, what we're meant to contribute, what brings us alive. But when we're constantly responding to other people's priorities, we lose touch with this internal guidance system. Think about the last time you felt truly energized and engaged. I'm willing to bet it wasn't when you were doing something you felt obligated to do. It was probably when you were pursuing something that resonated with your values, your interests, your natural talents. That feeling of aliveness is your life purpose calling to you. But here's what happens when we become chronic people pleasers. We start to mistake busyness for purpose. We confuse being needed with being valuable. We think that because we're helping others, we're living meaningfully. But there's a crucial difference between living someone else's idea of a meaningful life and living your own. Maria always dreamed of becoming a teacher. She loved working with children and had a natural gift for explaining complex concepts in simple terms. But when she graduated college, her parents convinced her to take a corporate job just for a few years to build financial stability. 20 years later, Maria is a successful executive who manages a team of 50 people. She's good at her job, and everyone around her is proud of her achievements. But Maria feels empty. She spent 2 decades building someone else's vision of success while her own dreams gathered dust. The children she might have inspired, the young minds she might have shaped, the difference she might have made in education. All of this was sacrificed on the altar of other people's expectations. This is the life purpose hijack. When we consistently say yes to paths that don't align with our true calling, we don't just postpone our dreams. We risk losing touch with them entirely. The fear behind the yes. Now, let's talk about why this happens. Why do intelligent, capable people consistently choose to betray their own interests? The answer lies in one of our most primal fears, the fear of rejection. From an evolutionary perspective, being rejected by the group meant death. Our ancestors who were cast out from their tribes didn't survive to pass on their genes. So we're literally hardwired to avoid rejection at almost any cost. This ancient programming is still running in our modern brains, even though being turned down for a coffee date or declining a work project won't actually threaten our survival. But our primitive brain doesn't know the difference. When someone asks us for something and we consider saying no, our fight or flight response kicks in. We imagine the disappointment in their eyes, the possibility that they might think less of us, the chance that they might reject us entirely. So we say yes, even when yes feels wrong. This fear of rejection manifests in many ways. We might fear being seen as selfish, unhelpful, or incompetent. We might worry that saying no will damage our relationships or hurt our career prospects. We might believe that we don't have the right to prioritize our own needs. David, a freelance graphic designer, takes on every project that comes his way, even the ones that pay poorly or don't align with his artistic vision. When I asked him why, he said, "What if I say no and they never come back? What if word gets around that I'm difficult to work with? What if this is the last client I ever get?" These fears, while understandable, keep David trapped in a cycle of unsatisfying work and constant financial stress. The myth of indispensability. One of the most seductive lies we tell ourselves is that we're indispensable. We convince ourselves that if we don't say yes, terrible things will happen. The project will fail. The person will be devastated. The world will somehow be a little bit worse. This myth of indispensability is both arrogant and self-defeating. It's arrogant because it assumes that other people can't handle things without us. It's self-defeating because it traps us in a prison of our own making. The truth is, most of the things we feel obligated to say yes to would happen just fine without us. That committee would find another member. That project would get completed by someone else. That friend would figure out their problem or find another shoulder to cry on. This doesn't mean we should never help others or that our contributions don't matter. It means we need to be more selective about when and how we offer our help. When we say yes to everything, we devalue our own contributions and exhaust our ability to show up fully for the things that truly matter. The energy economics of yes and no. Let's talk about energy, not just physical energy, but emotional and mental energy as well. We each have a finite amount of energy to spend each day. When we say yes to things that don't align with our values or interests, we're making a poor investment of this precious resource. Imagine you have 100 energy units to spend each day. When you do something you're passionate about, you might spend 20 units, but gain back 15 in the form of satisfaction, fulfillment, and enthusiasm. When you do something you resent or feel obligated to do, you might spend 30 units and gain back nothing, or even go into energy debt because the activity drains you. This is why people who are constantly saying yes often feel exhausted, even when they're not particularly busy. They're operating at an energy deficit, constantly spending more than they're replenishing. The ripple effect, how your yes affects others. Here's something that might surprise you. When you say yes to things you don't want to do, you're not just hurting yourself. You're potentially hurting others too. When you show up to something you don't want to be at, your lack of enthusiasm is palpable. When you help someone with a project, but you're resentful about it, the quality of your help suffers. When you agree to plans you're not excited about, you bring down the energy of the entire group. On the flip side, when you learn to say no to things that don't serve you, you create space to say yes to things that do. You show up more fully, more enthusiastically, more authentically. The people around you benefit from your genuine engagement rather than your grudging compliance. The authenticity crisis. Perhaps the most insidious cost of constant people-pleasing is what it does to our authenticity. When we consistently override our own preferences to accommodate others, we lose touch with who we really are. We become so good at being what others want us to be that we forget what we actually want to be. This creates what I call the authenticity crisis, a state where we're successful at being someone else's version of ourselves while failing at being our own version. We might be well-liked, professionally successful, and socially active, but we feel hollow inside because we're living someone else's life. The scariest part is that this crisis can go unnoticed for years. We're so busy meeting everyone else's expectations that we don't have time to check in with ourselves. We mistake external validation for internal satisfaction. We confuse being needed with being fulfilled. The compound effect of small betrayals. Every time we say yes when we want to say no, we're committing a small act of self-betrayal. On its own, each instance might seem insignificant, but these small betrayals compound over time, creating a massive deficit in our relationship with ourselves. Think of it like compound interest, but in reverse. Each small betrayal adds to the debt we owe to our authentic self. Over years and decades, this debt grows exponentially until we find ourselves living a life that's completely disconnected from what we actually want. The good news is that compound interest works both ways. When we start making small acts of self-respect, saying no to things that don't serve us, prioritizing our own needs, honoring our own preferences, these positive actions compound too. Every authentic choice we make strengthens our relationship with ourselves and makes the next authentic choice easier. The path forward, reclaim your no. So how do we break free from this pattern? How do we reclaim our right to say no without destroying our relationships or sabotaging our careers? The answer lies in understanding that saying no is not a rejection of others. It's an affirmation of ourselves. The first step is recognition. Start paying attention to how you feel when you say yes to things. Notice the difference between the enthusiastic yes that comes from genuine desire and the reluctant yes that comes from fear or obligation. Your body will tell you the difference if you learn to listen. The second step is to start small. You don't need to revolutionize your entire life overnight. Begin by saying no to small requests that don't align with your priorities. Practice the words. Get comfortable with the discomfort of potentially disappointing others. The third step is to remember that you're not responsible for other people's emotions. Their disappointment is not your problem to solve. Their inconvenience is not your crisis to manage. This doesn't mean you should be callous or uncaring, but it does mean you need to maintain healthy boundaries. Conclusion: the gift of your authentic yes. As we wrap up this exploration of the hidden costs of saying yes, I want to leave you with a different perspective. The goal isn't to become someone who says no to everything. The goal is to become someone whose yes means something. When you learn to say no to things that don't serve you, your yes becomes more valuable. When you show up to something you've genuinely chosen to be part of, you bring your full self to the experience. When you help someone because you want to, not because you feel you have to, your help is more meaningful and effective. The art of saying no is really the art of saying yes to what matters most. It's about reclaiming your time, your energy, and your life purpose. It's about choosing to live authentically rather than acceptably. Your life is not a dress rehearsal. Every day you spend living someone else's priorities is a day you're not living your own. The world doesn't need another person who's good at being what others want them to be. The world needs you to be courageously, authentically, unapologetically yourself. And that begins with learning to say no. Thank you for taking this journey with me. In the next chapter, we'll explore practical strategies for saying no gracefully and effectively, without burning bridges or damaging relationships. Until then, I challenge you to notice one situation in the next 24 hours where you might naturally say yes, and consider whether that yes is serving you or betraying you. Remember, your no is not a rejection of others. It's an affirmation of yourself. Chapter 2, Boundaries are not walls. Discover how to set healthy, strong boundaries without guilt. This chapter gives you the mindset shift and simple language to say no without explanation, and still keep your respect and relationships. The great boundary misconception. Sarah stared at her phone, feeling her chest tighten as she read the text from her colleague. Can you cover my shift tomorrow? I know it's your day off, but I really need this favor. Her finger hovered over the keyboard, torn between two equally uncomfortable options. Saying yes and sacrificing her much-needed rest, or saying no and feeling like a terrible person. This internal battle reveals one of the most damaging misconceptions about boundaries in our culture, that setting them makes us selfish, cold, or uncaring. The truth is far more liberating and counterintuitive. Boundaries are not walls that shut people out, but bridges that connect us more authentically. When we understand this fundamental distinction, everything changes. A wall is rigid, permanent, and designed to keep others at a distance. A boundary, however, is permeable, flexible, and actually facilitates deeper, more honest relationships. Think of boundaries as the rules of engagement that allow relationships to flourish rather than burn out. Consider the difference between a garden wall and a garden fence. A wall blocks out sunlight, air, and connection entirely. A fence, however, defines the space while still allowing light to filter through, air to circulate, and neighbors to interact pleasantly over the barrier. Healthy boundaries work exactly like this fence. They create definition and protection while maintaining connection and respect. When we operate from this understanding, setting boundaries becomes an act of love rather than rejection. The psychology of boundary resistance. Before we can master the art of saying no, we must understand why our brains resist boundaries so fiercely. From an evolutionary perspective, humans survived by staying connected to their tribe. Being cast out meant death, so our ancestors developed an exquisite sensitivity to social rejection. This ancient programming still runs in our modern minds, triggering alarm bells whenever we perceive that setting a boundary might threaten our belonging. This biological inheritance manifests in what psychologists call people-pleasing syndrome, the compulsive need to say yes to maintain harmony and approval. When someone asks us for something, our primitive brain interprets no as potentially dangerous to our social standing. The result is a cascade of anxiety, guilt, and rationalization that often leads us to overcommit, undervalue our own needs, and gradually build resentment toward the very people we're trying to please. The irony is profound. By failing to set boundaries, we often damage our relationships more than if we had simply said no from the beginning. Without clear boundaries, we become unpredictable, unreliable when we're stretched too thin, and passive-aggressive when our unspoken needs aren't met. The colleague who always says yes eventually becomes the colleague who burns out, makes mistakes, or suddenly snaps over a minor request. Understanding this psychological pattern is the first step toward breaking free from it. Reframing, from rejection to self-respect. The most powerful shift in boundary setting comes from reframing what no actually means. Instead of viewing boundaries as rejection, we can understand them as self-respect made visible. When you say no to one thing, you're simultaneously saying yes to something else. Your values, your well-being, your existing commitments, or your long-term goals. This isn't selfish. It's strategic and sustainable. Imagine two scenarios. In the first, you say yes to every request, gradually becoming overwhelmed, stressed, and less effective at everything you do. Your relationships suffer because you're always frazzled, your work quality declines because you're spread too thin, and your health deteriorates from chronic stress. In the second scenario, you thoughtfully choose where to invest your time and energy, showing up fully present and capable for the commitments you do make. Which version of you is more valuable to your relationships and community? This reframe transforms boundary setting from a defensive act into a proactive strategy for living authentically. When you view your time, energy, and attention as finite resources that deserve thoughtful allocation, saying no becomes as natural as a CEO declining a meeting that doesn't align with company priorities. You're not being mean, you're being intentional. You're not shutting people out. You're creating space for meaningful engagement where you can truly contribute. The anatomy of a healthy boundary. Healthy boundaries share several key characteristics that distinguish them from walls or weak barriers. First, they're clear and specific rather than vague or implied. Instead of hoping people will intuitively understand your limits, you communicate them directly. This clarity eliminates the guesswork and resentment that comes from unspoken expectations. Second, healthy boundaries are consistent. They don't change based on your mood, the person asking, or external pressure. This consistency builds trust because people know what to expect from you. When your boundaries are reliable, others can plan accordingly and respect your limits without taking them personally. Third, effective boundaries are communicated with kindness but without over-explanation. You don't need to justify your limits with elaborate reasons or apologize for having them. A simple, respectful no is complete. Over-explaining often signals that you're unsure about your own boundary, which invites negotiation and pushes back. Finally, healthy boundaries are enforced with natural consequences rather than punishment. If someone repeatedly disrespects your clearly stated limits, you adjust your level of engagement accordingly. This isn't about revenge. It's about protecting your well-being and maintaining the integrity of your boundaries. The language of boundaries, scripts that work. The words we use to set boundaries can make the difference between a conversation that strengthens relationships and one that damages them. Effective boundary language is direct, respectful, and requires no justification. Here are proven scripts that work in various situations. For workplace requests, I won't be able to take on that project with my current workload. Notice the absence of sorry or detailed explanations about why you're busy. This statement is factual, professional, and complete. For social invitations, that doesn't work for me, but thank you for thinking of me. This acknowledges the gesture while clearly declining without creating a story about why you can't attend. For family obligations, I've already made plans for that time. Whether your plans involve work, rest, or other commitments doesn't matter. Your time is yours to allocate. For emergency requests, I'm not available to help with that right now. This statement doesn't debate whether something is truly an emergency or suggest alternative solutions, which often leads to further pressure. The key to all these scripts is their simplicity and finality. They don't invite debate, don't apologize for existing, and don't provide ammunition for someone to argue with your decision. Practice these phrases until they feel natural, because the more comfortable you become with boundary language, the more respect you'll command. Dealing with boundary pushback. One of the biggest fears people have about setting boundaries is how others will react. The reality is that some people will push back, especially if they've benefited from your previous lack of boundaries. This pushback is not a sign that your boundaries are wrong. It's often confirmation that they're necessary. Common pushback tactics include guilt tripping, I thought I could count on you, minimizing, it's just a small favor, manipulation, if you really cared about me, you'd help, and anger, you're being selfish. These responses reveal more about the other person's relationship with boundaries than about the validity of yours. When faced with pushback, the most effective response is to remain calm and repeat your boundary without escalating. This technique, called broken record, involves stating your limit consistently without getting drawn into debates about its reasonableness. For example, I understand you're disappointed, but I won't be able to help with that. If the person continues pushing, you can say, I've already given you my answer, and change the subject or end the conversation if necessary. Remember that how someone reacts to your boundaries is information about them, not about you. People who respect you will accept your limits, even if they're initially disappointed. Those who consistently push against your boundaries may be more invested in what you can do for them than in your well-being. The ripple effect. How boundaries transform relationships. The most surprising discovery many people make about boundaries is how they actually improve relationships rather than damage them. When you're clear about your limits, you eliminate the guesswork and resentment that comes from unclear expectations. People know where they stand with you, which creates a foundation of trust and respect. Boundaries also model healthy behavior for others. When you demonstrate that it's possible to say no with kindness and confidence, you give others permission to do the same. This creates a culture of mutual respect where everyone's needs are considered rather than just those of the most demanding person. Furthermore, when you no longer overcommit and overwhelmed, you show up more fully for the commitments you do make. Your friends, family, and colleagues get the best version of you rather than a stressed, resentful version who said yes out of obligation. This shift often leads to deeper, more authentic connections because people feel your genuine presence rather than your reluctant compliance. The transformation doesn't happen overnight, but as you consistently maintain your boundaries, you'll notice that people begin to respect your limits automatically. They'll think twice before making last-minute requests because they know you value your time. They'll appreciate your honesty because they know you mean what you say. This respect creates space for relationships based on mutual consideration rather than one-sided accommodation. Building your boundary blueprint. Creating sustainable boundaries requires a personalized approach based on your values, circumstances, and goals. Start by identifying areas where you feel consistently overwhelmed, resentful, or taken advantage of. These emotional signals indicate where boundaries are most needed. Next, clarify your non-negotiables, the values and commitments that are most important to you. These might include family time, professional development, health maintenance, or creative pursuits. When you're clear about what matters most, it becomes easier to say no to requests that compete with these priorities. Consider your energy patterns and natural rhythms. Some people are most productive in the morning, others in the evening. Some need significant alone time to recharge. Others gain energy from social interaction. Your boundaries should reflect and protect these natural tendencies rather than forcing you into patterns that drain you. Finally, anticipate common boundary challenges in your life and prepare responses in advance. If you typically struggle with family requests, workplace demands, or social obligations, having ready responses reduces the mental energy required to maintain your limits in the moment. The maintenance phase, keeping boundaries strong. Setting boundaries is just the beginning. Maintaining them requires ongoing attention and adjustment. Like a garden fence that needs occasional repair, boundaries require regular maintenance to remain effective. This maintenance involves regular self-check-ins to assess whether your current boundaries are serving you well. Are you feeling overwhelmed despite having boundaries in place? You might need to tighten them. Are you feeling isolated or like you're missing opportunities? You might need to adjust them to allow for more connection or flexibility. It's also important to recognize that boundaries may need to evolve as your life circumstances change. The boundaries that worked when you were single might not be appropriate after you have children. The limits that served you as a junior employee might need adjustment as you advance in your career. Remember that maintaining boundaries is a skill that improves with practice. Each time you successfully hold a boundary, you build confidence and competence. Each time you notice yourself slipping back into old patterns, you can course correct without judgment. The goal isn't perfection. It's progress toward a more authentic, sustainable way of living. Conclusion: the freedom of authentic living. As we conclude this exploration of boundaries, it's important to recognize that the ultimate goal isn't to become someone who always says no, but to become someone who can say no when necessary. This distinction is crucial because effective boundaries create space for meaningful yes. Commitments you can honor fully because they align with your values and capacity. The journey from people-pleasing to authentic boundary setting is not always smooth, but it's always worthwhile. You'll discover that relationships built on mutual respect and clear expectations are far more satisfying than those based on unclear obligations and hidden resentments. You'll find that professional success comes more easily when you're strategic about your commitments rather than reactive to every request. Most importantly, you'll experience the profound relief that comes from living authentically. No longer exhausted by trying to be everything to everyone, no longer resentful about commitments you didn't truly choose, and no longer anxious about disappointing others because you've learned to honor your own needs alongside theirs. The art of saying no is ultimately the art of saying yes to your most important values, relationships, and goals. When you master this art, you don't just set boundaries. You create a life that reflects who you truly are and what you genuinely care about. That authentic life is not just more satisfying for you, it's more valuable to everyone around you. Remember, boundaries are not walls that shut people out, but bridges that connect you more authentically to what matters most. In learning to say no with confidence and kindness, you give yourself and others the gift of your most genuine, present, and caring self. Chapter 3: The No That Builds Your Future. How every no creates space for the yes that truly matters. Master saying no in tough situations, at work, with family, or in friendships, and watch your life transform. The architecture of refusal. In the quiet moments between requests and responses, between demands and decisions, lies one of the most powerful tools for building the life you actually want. The strategic no. This isn't about becoming difficult or antisocial. It's about understanding that every yes you give automatically creates a no somewhere else in your life. When you say yes to that extra project at work, you're saying no to evening time with your family. When you agree to help a friend move for the third time this month, you're declining the Saturday morning you planned to spend on your own creative project. The art of saying no is really the art of saying yes to what matters most. Most people approach saying no as if it's a defensive action, something you do to protect yourself from others' demands. But this perspective misses the transformative power of strategic refusal. Every no you give is actually a yes in disguise, a yes to your priorities, your values, your long-term vision of who you want to become. When you decline a social obligation that drains your energy, you're saying yes to activities that energize you. When you refuse to take on someone else's urgent problem, you're saying yes to solving your own important challenges. This reframe changes everything about how you approach the decision to refuse. The silence that follows a well-placed no is often uncomfortable, but it's in this silence that your future takes shape. In a world that rewards constant availability and endless accommodation, the person who can sit quietly with their refusal while others fill the space with justifications and negotiations holds tremendous power. This isn't about being cruel or indifferent. It's about recognizing that your peace of mind and your ability to contribute meaningfully to the world depends on your willingness to protect your time and energy from well-meaning but ultimately draining requests. The economics of attention. Your attention is the most valuable currency you possess. And like any currency, it must be allocated strategically to create the returns you want in life. Every time you say yes to something, you're making an investment. The question is, are you getting the returns you want, or are you unknowingly investing in other people's priorities while your own dreams remain unfunded? The person who masters the art of saying no understands that their attention is finite and precious, and they guard it accordingly. Consider how differently you would approach your day if you truly understood that you have exactly 16 waking hours to invest in building the life you want? Would you really spend 3 of those hours in a meeting that could have been an email? Would you commit your evening to a social obligation that leaves you feeling drained rather than energized? The mathematics of attention are unforgiving. Time spent on one thing is time that cannot be spent on another. This isn't about being selfish. It's about being strategic. The most successful people in any field share one common trait. They're exceptionally skilled at saying no to opportunities that don't align with their core objectives. They understand that their ability to achieve extraordinary results in their chosen area depends on their willingness to be ordinary or absent in other areas. This requires a level of clarity about what matters most that many people never develop. Because developing this clarity requires the kind of deep reflection that only comes from regular periods of silence and solitude. When you begin to see your yes and no's as investments in your future self, every decision becomes clearer. The request that seems urgent today may contribute nothing to the person you want to be 5 years from now. The opportunity that appears exciting may actually be a distraction from the deeper work that will define your legacy. This long-term perspective transforms saying no from a reluctant necessity into a confident choice. The workplace no, professional boundaries that advance your career. In professional settings, the ability to say no strategically is often what separates those who advance from those who remain stuck in reactive patterns. The employee who takes on every project may appear dedicated, but they often lack the focused energy needed to excel at the work that actually matters for their career progression. Meanwhile, the person who carefully selects their commitments and executes them brilliantly becomes known for quality rather than quantity. The key to saying no at work lies in understanding the difference between being helpful and being valuable. Being helpful means responding to whatever needs arise, often sacrificing your own priorities to solve other people's problems. Being valuable means developing deep expertise in areas that matter to your organization and protecting the time needed to do your best work in those areas. When you say no to the constant stream of quick favors and small requests, you create space to develop the kind of expertise that makes you irreplaceable. Most workplace conflict around saying no arise because people focus on the refusal itself rather than the alternative they're offering. Instead of simply declining a request, the strategic professional explains what they can offer instead. I can't take on this project this week, but I can review your proposal and give you feedback by Friday. This approach shows that you're not being difficult. You're being strategic about how you can contribute most effectively. The most powerful workplace no is the one that comes from a place of confidence in your own value rather than fear of others' reactions. When you know that your focused attention on your core responsibilities produces better results than scattered attention across multiple projects, you could decline additional commitments with conviction. This confidence communicates to others that you take your work seriously and that your time is valuable, qualities that tend to increase rather than decrease your professional standing. Your career trajectory is largely determined by what you choose not to do. The projects you decline, the meetings you skip, the emergencies you don't make your own. These choices create the space for the deep work that builds expertise and reputation. The professional who understands this dynamic and has the courage to act on it consistently will always outperform the one who tries to please everyone. Family dynamics. Love without endless accommodation. Family relationships present unique challenges when it comes to saying no, because the emotional stakes feel higher and the expectations for availability are often greater. However, healthy family dynamics actually require clear boundaries, and a family member who can say no with love and firmness often contributes more to family harmony than the one who says yes to everything while building resentment. The family no is particularly powerful when it comes from a place of wanting to be fully present for what matters most. When you decline to attend every family gathering, you can show up fully engaged for the ones you do attend. When you refuse to be the family member who solves everyone's problems, you create space for others to develop their own problem-solving capabilities. This isn't about caring less. It's about caring more strategically. Children, paradoxically, benefit greatly from parents who can say no with confidence and kindness. A parent who establishes clear boundaries teaches their children that people have limits, that requests can be denied without relationships being damaged, and that self-respect involves protecting one's own time and energy. The child who grows up with a parent who says yes to everything may struggle to develop their own boundary-setting skills. Extended family dynamics often revolve around unspoken expectations about availability and accommodation. The family member who breaks these patterns by saying no to requests that don't align with their values or capacity often faces initial resistance, but ultimately creates healthier dynamics for everyone. When you stop enabling family members' unrealistic expectations, you force them to develop more realistic approaches to getting their needs met. The most loving family no is often the one that prevents you from showing up resentful or exhausted. When you decline a request because accepting it would compromise your ability to be present and engaged, you're actually prioritizing the quality of your family relationships over the quantity of your accommodations. This distinction between being available and being present is crucial for maintaining healthy family bonds while protecting your own well-being. Friendship and social boundaries. Quality over quantity. Friendships thrive on mutual respect, and respect includes respecting each other's boundaries. The friend who can say no when they need to is actually a better friend than the one who says yes to everything while gradually building resentment. True friendship involves accepting that people have limits and that these limits don't reflect a lack of caring. Social pressures to maintain constant availability can be overwhelming, especially in an age of instant communication and social media. The person who can resist these pressures and maintain boundaries around their social commitments often enjoys deeper, more meaningful friendships than the one who tries to be available to everyone all the time. Quality friendships require the kind of focused attention that can only come from protecting your time and energy. The most important social no is the one that protects your energy for the friendships that truly matter. When you decline invitations to events that drain you, you preserve your capacity to show up fully for the friends and activities that energize you. This isn't about being antisocial. It's about being social in a way that aligns with your values and energy levels. Peer pressure doesn't end in adolescence. It simply becomes more subtle. The adult version involves pressure to maintain social obligations that don't serve your growth or happiness. The person who can resist this pressure and make social choices based on their own values rather than others' expectations will build a social life that supports rather than undermines their goals. When you say no to social requests, you're not just declining an invitation, you're defining what kind of social life you want to have. Each no shapes your reputation as someone who makes thoughtful choices about their time, which tends to attract other people who value intentionality over constant availability. This creates a positive cycle where your social circle becomes increasingly aligned with your values and priorities. The ripple effects. How your no changes everything. Every strategic no you give creates ripples that extend far beyond the immediate situation. When you decline a request at work, you signal to your colleagues that you take your core responsibilities seriously. When you say no to a family obligation, you demonstrate that you value quality over quantity in your relationships. When you refuse a social invitation, you show that you're intentional about how you spend your time. These signals accumulate over time to create a reputation as someone who makes thoughtful choices. The person who can say no effectively often finds that they receive fewer frivolous requests over time. People learn to approach them more thoughtfully, presenting requests that are genuinely important rather than merely convenient. This natural filtering effect means that your yes become more meaningful and your contributions more valued. The strategic no is actually a gift to others. It teaches them to be more intentional about what they ask for. Your consistent practice of saying no to misaligned opportunities creates space for aligned opportunities to emerge. When you're not constantly busy with other people's priorities, you become available for the projects, relationships, and experiences that truly matter to you. This availability isn't just about having time. It's about having the mental and emotional capacity to recognize and seize the right opportunities when they appear. The cumulative effect of strategic no's is a life that feels more authentically yours. Instead of being shaped by others' expectations and requests, your days become structured around your own values and priorities. This alignment creates a sense of integrity and purpose that no amount of accommodation can provide. You become someone who lives intentionally rather than reactively. Perhaps most importantly, your willingness to say no models healthy boundaries for others. When people see you making thoughtful choices about your commitments, they're more likely to examine their own patterns of accommodation and people-pleasing. Your strategic no's contribute to a culture where people's time and energy are respected rather than assumed to be infinitely available. The transformation from reactive to intentional. The journey from saying yes to everything to saying no strategically is fundamentally a journey from reactive to intentional living. Instead of allowing others' requests to determine how you spend your time, you begin to make conscious choices about how your energy is allocated. This shift requires developing a clear sense of what matters most to you and the courage to act on that clarity even when it disappoints others. The transformation begins with recognizing that your current yes to everything pattern isn't actually serving anyone well. When you're constantly overcommit, you show up to your various obligations tired, distracted, and resentful. Your work suffers, your relationships suffer, and your own well-being suffers. The strategic no is actually a gift to everyone in your life. It ensures that when you do say yes, you can do so wholeheartedly. As you develop your no-saying skills, you'll notice that your yes become more powerful. Because you're more selective about your commitments, you can bring more focus and energy to the things you do choose to do. This creates a positive feedback loop where your contributions become more valuable, which increases others' respect for your boundaries. People begin to understand that when you say yes, it means something significant. The internal transformation is equally important. As you practice saying no to external requests, you also develop the ability to say no to internal impulses that don't serve your long-term interests. You become better at declining the urge to check social media when you need to focus, saying no to negative thought patterns that drain your energy, and refusing to engage in activities that compromise your values. The external practice of saying no builds the internal muscle of self-discipline. Over time, this practice creates a life that feels increasingly aligned with your authentic self. Your days become filled with activities that energize rather than drain you, relationships that support rather than deplete you, and work that fulfills rather than frustrates you. This isn't about perfection. It's about progress toward a life that feels genuinely yours rather than a collection of other people's expectations. The mastery, when no becomes natural. True mastery of the strategic no comes when refusing misaligned requests becomes as natural as breathing. You no longer need to struggle with guilt or anxiety about disappointing others. You simply make decisions based on your values and priorities, knowing that this approach ultimately serves everyone better. This mastery isn't about becoming cold or indifferent. It's about becoming genuinely skilled at managing your energy and attention. The master of strategic refusal understands that every no is also a yes to something else. They've developed the clarity to know what they're saying yes to when they decline a request, and they can communicate this to others in a way that demonstrates thoughtfulness rather than rejection. This skill transforms potentially difficult conversations into opportunities to share your values and priorities with others. At this level of mastery, you begin to attract opportunities and relationships that align with your authentic self rather than having to constantly defend against those that don't. Your reputation as someone who makes thoughtful choices about their commitments draws people who value intentionality and respect boundaries. This creates a positive cycle where maintaining your boundaries becomes easier because you're surrounded by people who understand and support them. The truly masterful no is given from a place of complete self-assurance and genuine care for others. You decline requests not because you're afraid or resentful, but because you're confident that your focused attention on your chosen priorities will allow you to contribute more meaningfully to the world. This confidence is evident in how you communicate your refusal, calm, clear, and kind, without over-explanation or apology. Your mastery of the strategic no ultimately becomes a form of leadership. By modeling healthy boundaries and intentional choices, you give others permission to do the same. Your life becomes an example of what's possible when someone has the courage to build their days around their own values rather than others' expectations. This isn't about being selfish. It's about being so clear about your purpose that you can serve it wholeheartedly. The legacy of strategic refusal. The choices you make about what to say no to today will determine the person you become tomorrow. Every strategic refusal is a vote for the life you want to build, and these votes accumulate over time to create a legacy of intentional living. The person who masters the art of saying no doesn't just improve their own life. They contribute to a culture where people's time and energy are respected and where quality is valued over quantity. Your strategic no's create space for others to step up and develop their own capabilities. When you refuse to always be the one who solves problems or meets urgent needs, you create opportunities for others to grow and contribute. This isn't about abandoning people. It's about avoiding the trap of enabling learned helplessness in others while exhausting yourself in the process. The ripple effects of your boundary setting extend far beyond your immediate circle. When you demonstrate that it's possible to live intentionally, make thoughtful choices about commitments, and maintain healthy boundaries while still being a caring and contributing member of society, you inspire others to examine their own patterns. Your example becomes a quiet form of activism for more sustainable and fulfilling ways of living. Your legacy of strategic refusal is ultimately a legacy of authenticity. By consistently choosing what aligns with your values over what others expect, you create a life that reflects your true self rather than a collection of accommodations to others' wishes. This authenticity becomes a gift to the world, an example of what's possible when someone has the courage to live according to their own inner compass rather than external pressures. The person who masters the art of saying no discovers that they've actually mastered the art of saying yes to what matters most. Their life becomes a testament to the power of conscious choice, intentional living, and the profound transformation that comes from having the courage to disappoint others in order to honor yourself. This isn't the end of caring about others. It's the beginning of caring about them in a way that's sustainable and genuine, rooted in choice rather than obligation, love rather than fear. In the end, your strategic no's become the foundation for a life of meaningful yes. Yes that come from abundance rather than scarcity, from strength rather than weakness, from love rather than fear. This is the art of saying no, not as a rejection of others, but as an embrace of your own authentic path, and an invitation for others to find theirs as well. I hope this taught you something today. Dr. Julian Vance has been with you all the way. And always remember, keep learning, keep pushing forward, keep listening, keep growing. Who stops reading, stops growing.